this regular council meeting to order Monday, July the 12th at 7 p.m. and to acknowledge that we are in the traditional territory of Stahelis. And the next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We'll move on to number 2, introduction of late items. Do you have any late items, Your Worship?
No, I have no late items. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I have approval of the agenda then, please?
Moved by Councillor Palmer, second by Councillor Vidal. Call the question. All in favour? All in favour? Thank you. Next order of business.
Yes, we have number 4, adoption of council minutes. We have the regular council meeting minutes of June 21st, 2021 here for adoption.
Moved by Councillor Vidal, second by Councillor Hooper. Any errors or omissions? Call the question. All in favour? Thank you. Next order of business.
Yes, Your Worship. Moving on to number 5. Is there any business arising from the minutes?
Any business from councillors arising from the minutes? None being, we'll move on, please.
Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. The only item is one item of correspondence, a letter dated July 8th, 2021 from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs regarding investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Environmental Equality Program, here for receipt, Your Worship.
And we have a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Vidal, sent by Councillor Palmer. Call the question. All in favour? Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship. There are no delegations or petitions this evening, nor is there any correspondence. We'll move right on to number 10, reports of councillors, committees, committee of the whole, and commissions.
Councillor Hooper.
Yes, good evening. I've just lost my piece of paper with it all on. 1 minute. Oh. Oh, found it. Sorry for that. On the 23rd, 25th of June and the 2nd and 7th of June, I attended the Zoom meetings with the CNIB on their training. And this time we looked at the new youth technology program to assist youths and their parents in understanding how most of these devices work. On the 30th of June and the 7th of July, I took part in with the Terramac Institute on crisis communication and COVID world, and monitoring outcomes and measuring impact lessons from the opportunities from the Youth Forum. 30th of June, I attended the in-house Zoom meeting here held by the council on cyber training. 6th of July, I attended a Zoom meeting with the CP 2040, the Clean Power, held by BC Hydro. And I've got to admit, I was a little bit disappointed in their answers to when the substation is going to be upgraded. There's already been a number of power outages, as I informed them. On the 8th of July, I attended a Zoom meeting with the Alzheimer's Society of BC through the BCRN. And today I attended a meeting this morning with the BCRN as part of Fraser Health. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Piper is not here, so sorry, Councillor Palmer.
On the 23rd, I had a full day board meeting retreat with the Fraser Valley Regional Library Board. And I would mention one topic, there were many things discussed, but the main topic was the issue of library funds. And during COVID, the library system was not levying fines for late returns. And many libraries systems throughout North America are no longer collecting fines at any time when you're late. So we had a discussion about whether or not that would be something that the Fraser Valley Regional Library would do, is suspend fines on a permanent basis. I argued somewhat against it. I was supportive of suspending fines for children because there is some issue of access, economic access issues. But for adults, I argued that they should pay fines. If there are no fines, fines make up about 2 to 3% of the board's revenue each year. Not a huge amount, and obviously there's also a cost in collecting the fines, but there is a part of the budget that comes from the fines. And of course, if fines are removed, then that money will come from somewhere. which will likely eventually work its way onto the levy that taxpayers pay in each of the municipalities. So I, on behalf of Harrison, and I was one of the few people who opposed it, thought that suspending fines for adults, I think there should be some consequences. I'm not totally a supporter of a no consequence world, but for children that they be suspended permanently, but not. So that's a topic, and it looks like that's what they're going to do is eliminate. There's a final decision to be made, but it will have a small impact on the budget. Right? A 2 or 3% amount of the budget is not huge, but if it's made up from one other area, that would make a fairly significant increase over a couple of years on the library levy that taxpayers pay here, and of course throughout the Fraser Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Your Worship. On June 30th, along with staff and council, I also attended the cybersecurity information and training session. On July 1st, I attended our virtual Canada Day celebrations. And I just want to offer my congratulations to Tourism Harrison for their outstanding efforts. And I also wanted to express a special thank you to Stay Halis once again for their participation. It was a wonderful day of music and given the circumstances of COVID, my hat's off, and another shout out to Tourism Harrison for their outstanding efforts. And that's my report, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next order of business, please.
Yes, we'll move on to number 11, reports from the mayor.
Thank you. Don't have too much this evening. Regional District last week, there wasn't a very short meeting, nothing much to report there. Saturday, on behalf of the village, I attended the welcome at the Schwichtenberg Farm in Agassiz for the concerts that the past 2 years the Harrison Festival has put on. And there's myself, Mayor Pranger, and Willie Charlie on behalf of Chief Leon, and also the Stahalis dancers. The one thing that they had to do there, due that it's being held on a farm, is the week before the concert starts, that they play music very loud all day for the benefit of the cows. Because the cows, if anything upsets them in any way, that's it. The milk production goes down and everything else. And this is what happened with the heat wave. The milk production went down, and unfortunately a lot of milk was thrown away. But I never knew it takes 100 pounds a day to feed every cow, and twice as much water. But anyway, they played music to keep the cows happy. So that was fine. But only a small turnout at the beginning of the opening, but I believe the shows are a great success, and they're sellout shows. And the Schwichtenberg family were very grateful to allow them to use their back garden there to put on the performances. In regards to the FreshNet, well, that's any fears of flooding have gone down now. It peaked last week at 12.26 on July 1st and 2nd, which is well below the peak forecast by the River Center, so that was fine. The unfortunate terrible thing that happened at Lytton with the fires there, that on behalf of council, I send a letter to Mayor Polderman. On behalf of the village of Harrison Hot Springs, please accept our deepest condolences to your council and residents on the wildfire tragedy that's devastated beautiful historic village of Lytton. And we made a contribution of $1,000 towards the relief effort there. And as of today, you probably heard that Teal Lumber donating enough to build 50 homes there at Lytton. On June the 22nd, we had a Zoom meeting with our minister, Josie Osborne, and Attorney General Minister responsible for housing, David Eby. And basically, it was just a general discussion on the housing needs and the government. And there were 34 on the call from that session of mayors, and also the minister did say that they're in the process of having built or building 30,000 units in the province for complex care supportive housing. So that's a good thing. There was some discussion about the electronic hearings and meetings, and of course the village is well ahead of that with their Zoom meetings and allowing people to participate via Zoom if they don't wish to come in person. The other thing that came up due to the shortage of rental housing, which happens in most municipalities, and it's happening here as well, is a shortage of rental housing for people who work in the village. So that was discussed as well. And other than that was an update on the COVID from the minister. And this has been a monthly call from the minister since she took over from Selena Robinson, and we thank her very much for that. And that's not much more. That's about all for my report. Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship, we'll move on to number 12, reports from staff. The first report we have is from the Fire Chief regarding Emergency Management BC structure protection deployment.
Good evening, Chief. It's all yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tonight, I'm here to request approval from Mayor and Council. Is that better, John? Yeah. Thanks. Sorry about that. Your Worship, tonight, I'm here on behalf of the Fire Department to request registration to provide assistance in wildland firefighting efforts. I'll give you the quick background. Given the current fire situation across British Columbia, Emergency Management BC, through the Fire Chiefs Association, has requested that additional fire department register their availability to provide assistance in wildland firefighting efforts. This entails the provision of 1 engine and 4 members. I'm requesting that Mayor and Council consider that the Harrison Hot Spring Fire Department register so that upon request by Emergency Management BC, our department could be deployed to provide fire suppression resources when needed. We currently have 4 members with engine boss training, which is a standard training for an officer to serve as incident commander in a wildfire situation. The remainder of the Harrison Hot Spring Fire crew has or will be taking wildland firefighting courses. As you may be aware, the Agassiz Fire Department deployed 1 engine with a crew of 4 to Lytton, BC. The Harrison Hot Spring Fire Department is on standby to assist them via our mutual aid agreement. Should Harrison Hot Spring Fire Department be deployed, the village would have 1 engine and 16 members remaining. The mutual aid agreement with Agassiz Department would be used for protection in the village if required. I've attached the literature from the Office of the Fire Commissioner, which provides additional information. A recommendation is that the Harrison Hot Spring Fire Department be authorized to register an expression of interest to participate in the structure protection program.
Thank you, Chief. We have a recommendation. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Vidal, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Discussion. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our Fire Chief. I certainly realize that this would be a great opportunity for our firefighters to gain some practical experience in wildfire and interface fire suppression. A couple of questions, Chief. Should an apparatus, a Harrison apparatus, be deployed, can we be assured that there would be adequate officers remaining in the village, especially if a major incident occurred. And also, if Agassiz Fire was also deployed at the same time, would our mutual aid agreement, would that still provide ample protection and coverage? And my other question, Chief, is if Harrison firefighters were deployed and they were injured, would WorkSafe BC still provide full coverage for those firefighters? Thank you.
Chief?
I'll try to answer all the questions. There was several there. I'll try to do it probably backwards here, just because it's the freshest in my memory. Yes, WorkSafe BC does cover them. They are paid by the Fire Chiefs Association through BC Emergency Management, so they are fully protected that way. As the agreement with Agassiz works, yes, we would have coverage from Agassiz as required. They have 2 engines and tenders at the availability at the moment, 3 engines now. We also would be able to draw from Seabird if required. I believe we would be adequately covered. Yes, we have ample officers. We would only send 1 officer forward out of our officers of 6. So we would have enough coverage here as well.
Thank you, Chief. You know my background and appreciate you answering the questions, and I will support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hooper?
Yeah, good evening. Just a couple of questions. You say you got 4 members with engine boss training. What exactly is that?
Engine
Chief?
boss is, sorry, overstepped that.
Carry on, Chief.
Thank you. Engine boss is the formal training for an officer in a wildfire situation where we're shipped out to cover protection for structures within a village or a town, depending on where we're sent. But it's the formal training for an officer to manage a crew.
Right. So if we're sending 4 members with the training up and the remainder of the crew are still waiting to undertake wildfire training, how are we prepared to actually deal with any wildfires within this area?
Only 1 of our officers would attend. 3 members, firefighters would attend with the officer.
And the last question, what compensation do they get or their family, should they be injured or a fatality occur? So I don't want to see the families suffer if we're doing this. So who pays for the compensation for them and the family?
I don't actually have the insurance policy, but I could get that information from Mayor and Council if they would like to see
I
it.
think that certainly needs to be looked at.
It would be an insurance through WorkSafe BC as well.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Palmer?
Yes. Proceeding with the questions that the other 2 councillors have asked, I do have a concern about with our coverage if they were away, but I take it that you've thought your way through that and that you've said you believe we would be fine. So the question that I would have is really just money. If a truck were to go, or if our engine were to go with 4 and they were to firefighting it for 2 or 3 days, obviously there would be a significant payment that would be necessary for that time. Is that something the villages would cover, or is that something that's covered by the provincial emergency services, and we're just providing the manpower and not bearing the cost of it?
To answer your question, no, it does not fall to the village. The trucks are insured. A newer truck is 100% insured. A 25-year-old or older truck is 75% insured. No cost to the village at all. All of the recuperables will be covered by BC management.
May I continue with that? Yeah. And do I take it as well that your volunteers are eager to be part of this program?
Absolutely. Prior to coming, I checked to make sure that we would have enough people that would want to. And in short, they would all ask to go. You only send a crew of 4 at any given time. They're away for up to 2 weeks. We would do similar to what Agassiz did. and we would split them 1 week in, 1 week out and change crews. The compensation is also covered for the village from BC Management Services.
Thank you. It does seem to me that obviously it's a good program, and obviously helping to contribute when you see things that happen such as at Lytton. That's obviously it's important to be helpful. And obviously if there was a major fire that took place around Harrison, we would be ever so happy to see the trucks from all the other municipalities show up to help us. So I'm supportive of it. I was just concerned about cost because I'm cheap, and how it would impact on our services. But it seems like it really has very little negatives and a possibility of doing a lot of positives. So I'm certainly supportive.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, just one last question. Because of all these wildfires that are springing up and that, has yourself or the fire brigade done an assessment of areas within the village that which require urgent assistance?
We have not covered the entire village, no. We do and have taken a look at the east sector. That was a major concern for us, but we have not covered the entire village as of yet, no.
So does anybody go around and look at the trails and the rest of it just to make sure that, like, I noticed we shut Mount Street off because of all the debris down there and the rest of it. But what I'm concerned with is that should we send people away and that we get a wildfire here within the village, we are going to be in some serious trouble with the amount of dryness of the material and that. So I would have liked to have seen an inspection and a report on this is like extreme, rest of it, just so we know, residents know where they stand.
The ratings are listed for the village as well as the surrounding areas on the board at the village office.
So would you advise of any clearing up of any debris that's lying about?
Okay. The village would wait to do the cleanup until the fire hazard had been reduced. We wouldn't send machinery in there right now. As it stands right now, they're not even suggesting people go into the bush with chainsaws. So cleanup is either pre or post on these types of things once a fire hazard changes.
Right, thank you.
Any further questions from council? Your lights on, Councillor Palmer. Thank you. Yes, this is come up very good time this evening, Chief, because the regional district is that's exactly what all their fire departments now, even the outlying ones like Pubcombe and all that, they're all on call for Lytton, those areas. I believe that a few years ago, there was a comprehensive plan done of the whole village in regards to fire, and that was done for the village. That's why I took the action to have the east sector trails closed. There's 400 acres of land there. Obviously, you can't put a fence along the 2 acres, the 2 kilometers, I mean. But at least it's closed. There's no cars there during the day, and hopefully people will obey the rules. We cannot, unfortunately, stop stupidity. We can't stop somebody throwing a cigarette, but you know, it's. I personally went over to 2 people last week at the east sector, standing there by their car smoking, and I asked them, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, don't you see the signs?" And they apologized and put the cigarettes out. But there you go. You see these things do happen, and you know, it's not. We can't go around holding people's hands. We have to hope that people would obey the rules and be very extremely careful at this time of the year. I mean, this is all over BC. This is not just Little Harrison. Everywhere where there's parks, trails, they're all, you know, just be careful when you're walking around. So that being said, any other questions from council? On the recommendation, all in favor? Opposed? Opposed, motion passes. Opposed, Councillor Hooper. Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes, we'll move on to the next report. That's from the Community Services Manager regarding Canada Community Revitalization Fund.
Jill,
Thank you, Your Worship. The Canada Community Revitalization Fund provides up to 75% funding for projects that help communities rebound from the effects of the pandemic, improve outdoor spaces, and increase accessibility. To Thank you, Your Worship. To further leverage the Resort Municipality Initiative funds, which have been greatly impacted by the reduction in MRDT due to hotel closures and travel restrictions in the last couple of years, staff is proposing that the village apply to the CCR fund to advance the Lagoon Pathway portion of the Lagoon Master Plan. The renderings for this phase of the project are attached in Appendix 1. The cost estimate for the Lagoon Pathway and area, including playground, resurfacing, and shade structure, is approximately $900,000. The current resort development strategy has a designated budget to meet the $225,000 match funding required for this grant. The recommendation is that staff apply to the Canada Community Revitalization Fund for up to $675,000 to revitalize the Lagoon Pathway and area. Thank you.
thank you, Michelle. So we have a recommendation. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Hooper, seconded by Councillor Vital. Discussion. Councillor Hooper.
Yes, I'm concerned about this because if we get the grant, we're going to spend $900,000 around the lagoon area. Yet we have only just in the last 2 years sort of dodged the bullet with the flooding. I mean, I don't want to see any work done around the lagoon until we address the problem with the flooding. Because you could do all this work and next year, God forbid, lose the whole lot of it. So until we get the flooding, the fences done against any flooding there, no, I can't support any money being spent around the lagoons. Sorry. I do realise it's a grant, but it's money that we'd have to pay back. We'd have to redo if it's washed out.
Comments from council. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Michelle. The only question that I have is because it appears that there is multiple grants or RMI funds that are going into the lagoon revitalization. Are we in danger of losing? My concern is just possibly stacking grants. Would we be in danger of losing any of the established grants that have already been approved? Thank you.
Joe?
Thank you, Your Worship. We've specifically looked at grants that allow for stacking, and because of the pandemic, there are various funds that are doing that right now. And we have consulted with the ministry that supplies the RMI funds, and they are supportive of this. And the Resort Municipality Initiative funds would not have covered the entire project as it was. So it would have taken many more years to get this far ahead without the additional grants.
Good, thank you. You've answered my question. Thank you, Your Worship.
Any other councillor? Councillor Palmer?
So just to recap, we have this master plan for the lagoon that arose from some public consultation. It's come to council. We've generally approved that format, thinking we find funding in the future. This is now apparently the future. And I take it that there is no danger that the balance, any part of that money, including the 225, is going to have to come from Harrison taxpayer revenue. It'll come from grants or it won't happen. Is that correct?
Michelle?
That is correct, Councillor. The resort development strategy is the document that we've used to find funding for this, but because it's been reduced, we're looking for additional grants. So there would be no money coming from the taxpayers here.
So if I may continue, I remember the earlier discussion we had about this. And of course, at some point, we have had a budget for art around the lagoon as well, which I assume will eventually happen in better financial times. Although the plan around the lagoon is one that had a lot of input and consultation, and I did support earlier, I'm finding myself falling off the wagon on it a little bit. And the reason I am is it did hit me later on that one of the things that one would think we would have a much better system in the village, and I know this goes to transportation, active transportation, is bicycle. And it hits me that although I know it would be very difficult because several people have asked me about biking along and I understand it's not easy to put biking on the beach, but it would be easy, I think, to put biking around the lagoon and then have it come on. So it would at least create a focus for people. There's so many people riding their bikes in this community. I would really wish that we could, and I know this doesn't work this way, and I know we're approving only the grant application, but I also understand once we approve the grant application, the wheels are in motion and we don't later on get a chance to tweak the plan. But I really would like to see a bicycle trail around the lagoon. And I don't know if it's possible to work that in at minimal cost, but I think that would be a real service, because I do see there's so many people with bicycles in the community, and we need to get more bike racks up here and create some safer more bike routes in the community. But I would certainly see the lagoon route that we're about to rebuild should have that. That would be certainly something that I would, even if it's pointless to say, it's something I would like to see. I will support the grant application because I know we've discussed it before. It had community support, and I do think it's generally a good idea, but I would feel so much better about it if it had a bike trail. Thank you.
Yes, in regards to the bike trail around there, I agree to a point. If once we get down to the design, if we get the grant, it may be an idea to I mean, I was asked regarding a bike trail along the promenade, but that's not practical because it would mean millions of dollars removing all the aeration system, picnic tables, garbage bins, the whole works. But around the lagoon may be a possibility if it could be worked in for pedestrian and for bicycles. Well, they do it now, actually. They ride around there, but you've got to be a little bit careful when somebody's coming behind you. But because it's not a bicycle trail as such at the moment. There's no bikes should be allowed at all around the lagoon or the beach area. But I think that should, when it comes up, if we're fortunate enough to get the grant, should come up for some discussion in regards to allowing bicycles around the outer edge of the lagoon. It's, I mean, this, we've been extremely fortunate in the last, we've been extremely fortunate in the last, this last year in grant money. If my calculations are right, we're up to about 2.7 million that's coming in grant money, including the COVID restart, 625,000. So it's, you know, when I say that majority or most or all the projects that we do, I know cost to the taxpayers, I am telling the truth, because it's all come out of funding, or the RMI, or our grants, or the gas tax, whatever the case may be. We've been very fortunate that we managed to get these grants approved for the village. So it's good for the village. Any other comments on this? No, before I call the question. No, the CAA, you have a comment?
I was just going to make the comment that the prohibition on bicycles around the lagoon is really a policy of council. So that's something that could be reconsidered in future. But with respect to if we're successful to get the grant and we put the project out for proposals, it's something we could ask proponents to consider giving advice on. My gut feeling is that there's not quite enough real estate for a multi-use trail around the lagoon, but we could certainly ask for consideration of that.
Thank you for those points. So I'll call the question on the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Opposed, Councillor Hooper. Motion passes. Next order of business, please.
Yes, thank you. We'll move on to number 13, bylaws. We have a report from the planning consultant regarding rezoning amendment application for 835 Ming Crescent. Back to you.
Hello? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Your Worship.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. For this issue this evening, we're seeking first reading of zoning amendment bylaw 1167, 2021. And the site under consideration is currently vacant and is approximately 0.09 hectares or 957 square meters in size and is accessible from Ming Crescent. As you can see on the diagram on the front, the top half of this large lot is the site under consideration, as the bottom half is also vacant and has a civic address of 839 Ming. With the zone, it's currently zoned R1 residential, and the minimum lot sizes for subdivision purposes ranges from 540 square meters when connected both to the village's sewer and water system to 925 square meters when hooked up to sewer only. The requested rezoning amendment is to change the current zoning from R1 to R3 to facilitate a future two-lot subdivision application. So when we're looking at it, we've done a comparison of what the current land use regulations are for the current R1 with the proposed, if council approves it. For R3, we've done a comparison from that. And what we found, there's two big changes that would happen that could alter the neighborhood, and that is the density and the massing of the built environment. The density change would result in two lots being created instead of one, and the overall built environment would change in that the lot coverage could change from 40% to 55%, and the buildings would be allowed to build closer to the lot lines, as you can see in the chart above. Just for council's consideration, during a recent council meeting, council denied a rezoning amendment request for a property located at 835 Angus Place, which is in this neighborhood. And the official community plan designation is low density residential, and there is no requirement for an OCP amendment, as the proposed R3 use is compatible with the current low density residential policies. The site is surrounded by R1 single family dwelling units, and the title of the site has been reviewed, and there is a flood covenant registered on the title. At this point in time, the referral agencies are not applicable, and staff recommendation is that first reading not proceed for zoning amendment bylaw number 1167, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Cussy. And we have a recommendation here. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Hooper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Discussion. Who's first? Councillor Palmer. Thank you.
A question or two. So when I look at the drawing or the sketch I have, it shows you refer to the top half. So when you mean the top half, you mean it's the north half. So this piece of property does not in any way abut onto Hadway Drive. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is the top lot, is it the same dimensions as the lot directly to the south of it? Are they both the same size lots?
They're roughly the same, yes, your worship.
And are they owned by the same person, if that's a fair question?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. It does hit me, if we go with the one, it'd be pretty hard to say no to the other at a later date. I've driven that area several times in the last week, so much so that I think people in the neighborhood probably think I'm one of those people looking to steal catalytic converters. But I noticed that on Ming, there is parking. There's that paved strip, which is unique to that area of the village. So there is parking for it. So that was a concern we had on the one that we refused. On the other hand, I look at the two and I think it likely means 4, and I do think the density is a little much for that area. So I'm going to support the motion to not proceed with the rezoning. But I don't know that just because the one went, I don't automatically feel I should refuse this because the parking is better. But again, the density, I'm really not a huge fan of creating higher and higher density in the neighborhoods that are quite a ways back from the lake. I think that seems to create problems. So thank you.
Councillor Hooper.
Yes, I support the recommendation not to proceed with the first reading. One it's R1 zone. Let's keep it as R1 zone. We're overbuilding within the village. And the second point with the parking, there is recessed parking there, but that will disappear once these properties are developed, because it'll be people's driveways. Now, me, Headway, Angus, Ramona, and that are all very narrow roads. You can't park on them. So where will visitors come to park and the rest of it? It's a point of not just looking at the zoning, but of the needs of the other residents around that area. We really need to consider that their points of view, and to be quite honest, the area is R1. I'd like to stay as R1. Thank you.
Councillor, any other comments? Councillor Vital?
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is a request, for lack of a better word, for another request for spot zoning within an R1 designated residential neighborhood. And I have previously voted against spot zoning in this area, and as indicated in Mr. Cossey's report, council denied a request for spot zoning in this neighborhood. I still hold the view, and I look forward to our upcoming OCP review, which will provide the opportunities for public participation and engagement on the future vision of land use within the village. So therefore, I do support the recommendation to not proceed with first reading of the bylaw amendment. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments from council? I also agree with the recommendation. It's as soon as I saw the plan in it, I didn't think that was the appropriate zoning for that half a lot. I'll call it half a lot for that. And as Councillor Vidal said, there'll be an opportunity when we start doing our OCP review, that if the public in the village wants to see different types of density in R1 zones or R2s, they'll have an opportunity to discuss that at that point. But as things are at the moment, I'm quite happy, and there's no other questions. I'll call the recommendation. All in favor? The recommendation? Nobody opposed? Thank you. Thank you. All in favor of the recommendation not to proceed? And the next order of business, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We'll move on to number 14. Is there any new business, Your Worship?
Business this evening? None being, move on, please.
Thank you. We'll move on to number 15, questions from the public pertaining to agenda items only. And for the purposes here this evening, Your Worship, we would like to invite the members that are attending in person if they have any questions first.
Anybody who wishes to ask a question pertaining to the agenda items only, please come forward. Carry on, sir.
Yes, John Allen, 398 Hot Springs Road. I spent most of the last couple of weeks getting rid of fuel on the forest floor and creating fire breaks around my home. And I continue to be dramatically concerned about the fire hazard that exists in the area which lies to the south of Cottonwood and to the east of McCombs, which I refer to as the Harrison Forest Park. That area includes 73 acres, which we, the village, own, 60 or 70 acres that somebody owns, maybe Peter Kingma or some successor, and some land in the east sector that's under the responsibility, I suppose, of the regional district. Throughout that forest area, which was logged 100 years ago, there's 1.5 feet or 2 feet of slash and tinder dry material all the way along it. We have had fires in there before, and I've gone in there to help the firemen to fight those fires. And one of the ways that we used to do that was we used to keep the quarry road open all the way from McCombs Eagle right back to the foot of Bear Mountain. At that point, we could join up with the road that was built by the District of Kent alongside the Hot Springs Slough. And that gave us access to all of that woodland area right back to McPherson Road on good, hard, metal cleared roads. If a fire occurs in there today, during this heat wave, we have prevailing southerly winds that happen just about every day and sometimes all day, but primarily in the afternoon. If a fire occurs there, it'll be very much like Lytton. It'll blow up the valley and all those cinders and ashes will come flying through the air and land on everybody's roof. So that, to my mind, is our biggest threat. What the village has done, unfortunately, is remove the culvert which went under Quarry Road and contained the water from the tall grass ditch. So today, you cannot go in there. You go down the Quarry Road until about the head of the bridle trail, and the culvert has been removed and there's a footbridge. So we have no way to go in there and to deal with a wildfire in all of that east sector. You can fight it a little bit off McCombs Drive, and sometimes you have water. On the east side along the Hot Springs ditch, the ditch is always full of water and you can pump from there. We don't have a helicopter, we don't have a water bomber. We really don't have a plan to deal with it in there. In some municipalities, and particularly more so since the tragedy in Lytton, municipalities are saying to property owners, it is your responsibility to clear all of the fuel out from the understory. It's not just unsightly premises concern anymore, it's dangerous premises. And if your lot is overgrown and full of fuel, it's a public hazard and it needs to be cleaned out. All of that 67 acres south of Cottonwood needs to be cleaned out. We, the village, need to do with our 67 acres that lies along Macomb Drive and also Firehall Park, which has had some attention. And I think that the village, in addition to getting the training that the fire chief is organizing, needs to be very much more proactive in dealing with the imminent threat of wildfire from our own woodland within the village of Harrison Hot Springs. So I know there were some recommendations made in that report 3 years ago. I don't think they've been activated, and they need to be activated, and we need to have a sense of urgency about what will we do if a fire breaks out in that section. And I don't see a real plan that's ready to go with all the right equipment and all the pumpers and tankers and whatever. And I'd urge the village to consider that as a matter of urgency and deal with it. Because if that fire breaks out, I'm afraid we're going to look a lot like Lytton. It's just tragic. So my question is, will council please spend the time to review the preparedness or lack of the same for a bushfire in Harrison that would threaten the rest of the community? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. As some people who are here this evening may recall, there was a very open house with a good attendance from the residents of the village. And one of the main discussions at open house was that there was a table set up by Fire Smart, who did a discussion on their recommendations. And yes, it's a lot of the residents should be responsible for any stacking of unnecessary stuff around their homes or having their gutters cleaned and all that business. And that's all in that and so the village did take an active part to do that. Sure, our fire chief and his crew who do practicing every week and also maybe once a week are very aware of our 400 acres on that side of the village and are very active to what could happen there. Of course, it's firstly impossible to get big heavy trucks and logging trucks in there to remove. That's why the regional district can't get a logging truck in there to remove trees when they come down, because there's no way of getting them in to try and remove the trees. You can't pick them up and move them by hand. And also it's a situation that where, as I said earlier on this evening, we have to be responsible for ourselves how we deal with things. If we see something that should be reported to the to the emergency people, please do it right away. Unfortunately, people tend not to report things when they see it in the village, whether it's criminal or uncriminal, but they should report it to the agencies. Our numbers are on our website, who to call. And people unfortunately do not do this. Even to today, I had calls from people said, did you call the police? They said, no, we didn't. Well, why? Because we don't want to get involved. Well, you don't get involved because your names are not disclosed and you're just reporting an incident. So it's very important that anything that you see, like I did last week, like I said, saw these two people smoking. I went up to them, spoke to them and asked them to move on, and they moved on. They were standing there smoking, and this is what happens. But there's many of you that walk that road every day, like a gentleman who's going to ask a question in a minute, I think, who knows that area very well when he walks his dog. I'm sure if he saw something unusual, he would report it. So it's a lot of it's to do with what you see and what can be reported. We appreciate Mr. Allen's concerns in regarding to the underbrush and stuff that's in there, but we have a different equipped fire department now to what we used to have back in the old days. We just the old one water tanker that's now in a private residence in Harrison. Chief, do you have any comments you'd like to, or just say that we're very aware of what's going on?
Sorry, Your Worship. Yes, we are aware of what's going on. We do practice on a regular basis. We are equipped with wildland fighting gear. Our crews are trained for it. Mr. Allen is not incorrect that the park is very, I guess for lack of a better term, full of debris that should be cleared. But as I understand it, the best we could do at this point was to close the park.
Yes, thank you. And you will recall our firefighters with the Ken firefighters were involved in a mountain fire on near Killers Cove there 2 or 3 years ago. So they're trained as well to not like the regular firefighters. That's a different type of training, but they're trained to a certain level as well. Let's all hope that we maintain vigilance and be very careful where we live, whether there was a 400-acre forest there or not. Just be very careful of what you keep around your home, and that has become a problem with some homes where they do tend to stack a lot of stuff, and in a lot of homes, I know there's probably a lot of gasoline containers in their garages as well, which they store for whatever reason. And is there somebody else who'd like to ask a question? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name's Ed Arndt. I'm from 815 Main Crescent. I want to compliment the council and mayor for agreeing to no further action on this rezoning. If it had been approved, it would have created a considerable impact on our community. We're large lots of approximately 100 feet frontage. And just recently, at a meeting today, one person brought up the fact that a house on the corner of Ming and Hadway has just gone up for sale. And he's got a 100-foot lot. And with the cost of real estate right now, he could buy that house and put up 2 lots. It would just have a snowball effect. So I appreciate you guys agreeing to stop this rezoning, and hopefully it doesn't come up again. Because if it does, we'll find that once that property's been rezoned, it's a flip-flop. There's 2 different owners, and one's just waiting to see what happens with this lot at 835. So I'm constantly trying to maintain communication. I'm the block watch captain of Ming Crescent, Hadway, Combs, and Rona. So I have to keep all these people informed. Today was the first time we found out that this was coming to council. We didn't have enough time to rally our forces, so to speak. But I want you to know that, you know, trying to be involved with this community and staying in touch is very difficult. And I just, again, want to thank you for doing what you did tonight and giving us a second chance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to ask a question? Just to a little bit of background on what this gentleman just mentioned in regards to communication. We have done a tremendous job of upgrading our website. Everything you need in regards to what you need to do in the village, or what requests you need, what forms you need, when the meetings are held, the regular council meetings. If you don't have there's a 12-month list there of when the council meetings are held. It's always normally the first and third Mondays, and every Friday the council notices are on all the bulletin boards at the office, at the post office, and even outside here at the Memorial Hall, and also on our website where you can download the full minutes as well, what's going on. So in case you didn't know that, there is a lot of information on our website for you to communicate with the village in any way that you wish, or come into the office if you want. Now the COVID restrictions are lifted, you can come in now and ask questions. But everything from looking at the annual budget to what's going on. Now we have this bang the table where you can put in your questions in there and what you think is needed in the village. I don't know if you've all seen the bang the table. It's on there, which is put on by our community services manager, Rhonda Shell. We actually, did somebody win a barbecue for that? Somebody won an actual barbecue that was put up for trying to get more response we're trying to get more response from the community as a whole. As we councillors know, in the past, you don't get much attendance, like most communities at council meetings from the public, unless there's a real buttonhole item that comes up. But we're glad that you've come this evening. But please, if you don't get the answers on the website, please call the office if you need a specific answer to a question. We'll try and help you, but there is a lot of information on there. So I'm sorry if you're having a problem, but it's very informative. Any other questions? So now I'll call the motion to it. Oh, yes, madam.
Yes, Your Worship. We'd like to invite those who are attending by Zoom if they wish to ask the question. Those individuals that are attending by Zoom, can we please invite them if they would like to ask a question?
Michelle?
Anyone who wishes to ask a question should now use the raise hand feature. There are no questions, Your Worship.
Questions? Thank you. So now I'll call the question to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Palmer, second by Councillor Vidal. All in favour? Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for attending this evening. Thanks, staff.